Hey, welcome back. As promised, I am absolutely thrilled to be joined by the author of The New Builders, Face to Face with the True Future of Business. The author is Seth Levine, partner and co-founder at the venture capital firm Foundry Group, and award-winning business journalist. Seth, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Shalom. The award-winning part is my co-author, actually, Elizabeth McBride, but I'll take credit while it's just me here. Thanks for that.
You should. Hey, listen, she shared the piece, so you get all the credit, and she gets your credit too. So there we go. So truly a pleasure, and we're going to talk about the book, but I love to get to know the person behind the microphone. So tell us your story and how you got into both your world of the venture capital as well as, of course, the book.
Yeah, well, happy to. I'll tell the very abbreviated version because there are probably more important things for us to talk about eventually. But I grew up on the East Coast. I went to school in the Midwest. I spent some time working in New York in the banking world. And then I moved to Colorado about a little over 20 years ago. I've been a venture capitalist for most of that 20 years. I worked for a few different companies doing corporate development, M&A, and actually ended up being kind of a general manager type person for a number of years, ran a big business or big portion of a public company for a while. And then turned my sights on venture, which has been my day job now for the last roughly 20 years. I first was working for a Palo Alto-based venture firm, but about 12 years ago, along with three other guys, I founded Foundry Group, which now manages about $3 billion. We invest, actually a little over $3 billion. We invest in companies. We also invest in other venture funds. So that's kind of my day job, and my side job, other than being an author now, which was a lot of work. My second side job is I advise a number of funds and companies around the globe. I have quite a bit of interest in Palestine and the Middle East region, and I also do quite a bit in some markets in Africa as well.
I love it. And you have a big, bold idea about the next generation of entrepreneurs who are going to play a critical role in helping rebuild communities, which is so critical, obviously, as we're hopefully rebounding, recovering from the past year and a half of what we will describe as just the era of COVID. So the book is again called The New Builders, and I feel fortunate that earlier in the show we had a conversation with a new builder. So in your definition, who are the new builders and what drives them?
Yeah, it turns out that the people that are starting businesses in the United States today are much more diverse, and maybe that shouldn't surprise folks, but it seems to, much more diverse than they used to be. Specifically, there are more women starting businesses, and there are more people of color, particularly Black people starting businesses than ever before. And in fact, white men are the minority now of business owners in the United States. We call these people the new builders because we wanted to give them a title, give them some agency. And really, they are the next generation of entrepreneurs in America. And we talk in the book a lot about why we need to support new builders if we are going to have a broad-based recovery from COVID. And so it's critically important that we understand these trends in entrepreneurship, especially because another thing that people don't realize is that entrepreneurship in the United States is slowly dying. And it has been for really the last 40 years, in particular, the last 15 years or so. And that's not what most people realize, especially people in my world in technology and venture capital, because that tiny slice of the entrepreneurial universe is doing quite well. But entrepreneurship, which is much broader than just people starting technology businesses. In fact, companies that are funded by venture capitalists only represent about 1% of businesses founded in any given year. But that broad group of companies, many of which are started by new builders, really needs our help, our support, and to be revitalized if we are to come out of this COVID crisis.
So you're touching on something really important. Again, I'm chatting with the co-author of The New Builders, Face to Face with the True Future of Business. And Seth, you're touching on something really, really important, that entrepreneurship is not on the upswing, and certainly COVID-19 has affected that in a way that was already in motion. So what are some of the factors from your perspective that's making it increasingly difficult to start a small business, which we have always referred to as the backbone of the economy? Maybe the backbone isn't that strong anymore.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. The backbone is not so strong. There are a number of different factors, but the main one is capital. If I could just boil it down, right? It's getting more companies access to money. And actually, there was a New York Times article the other day that sort of asked, we've seen a very recent uptick in entrepreneurship in the application for business licenses. It perhaps is a silver lining to COVID that more people are exercising their entrepreneurial muscles coming out of COVID, really probably out of necessity, which is often how communities, like the communities of people that are starting businesses now, react to times of need. They are very self-sustaining and they're go-getters. So they start businesses and they make it on their own. Perhaps we're seeing a resurgence of entrepreneurship. But the article asked a question, which is sort of an obvious question, or there's an obvious answer, which is the stimulus responsible for people deciding to start more businesses? And the answer is obvious to me because we know so clearly the connection between capital and business starts and business growth. And whether it's stimulus or some other money, getting more capital to more people who are new builders will result in more business starts. And I think that's clearly what we're seeing. How sustainable that is, how much that can counteract the number of businesses, particularly small businesses, particularly businesses that were started by new builders that tend to rely more on face-to-face interactions. Those businesses we know were disproportionately affected by COVID in the first place. We don't know how those businesses are going to come back. We don't know how that's going to mix with some of these new businesses that are being started. But I think if there is a reason to be hopeful, and I think there are plenty of reasons to be hopeful, but a recent set of data suggests that more people actually are coming out of COVID and starting companies on their own, which I think is great.
I like the optimistic note. And so on that, we're going to squeeze in a quick break because I like to stay on the glass half full side of things. When we come back, we're going to talk more about some of the stories that you highlight in New Builders. And I know that there are many of them. So again, you're listening to Get Down to Business, chatting with the author of The New Builders. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. You're listening to Get Down to Business. I'm chatting with Seth Levine, who is the author of The New Builders, Face-to-Face, The True Future of Business. Truly critical conversation. And I love the storytelling. I love the storytelling in this book. So Seth, let's get right back to it. You highlight many examples of amazing stories of those new builders for which the book was titled. Tell us some of those examples.
Outstanding. I'd love to. And really, what we tried to do in the book was balance talking about data and trends, but punctuating those trends with the stories of people that are actually on the ground and doing the work. Because we think it's really important for people to understand who those new builders are. It's the same reason we put this photo section in the middle, photo insert in the middle of the book, because we wanted people to actually see what these new builders look like. We ended the last segment by talking about access to capital. And one of the most compelling stories in the book, I believe, is the story that actually we start out chapter 1 with, which is this woman, Dinaris Mazzara, who's a Dominican baker in Lawrence, Massachusetts, and she started her business with $37 in food stamps. Her husband had lost her job. She was concerned about sort of feeding her family, and her mother brought over $37 in food stamps for her to buy food. Instead of buying food, she bought the ingredients to make flan, which she didn't know how to make actually up to that. She describes having sort of a divine moment where she believed she was sort of instructed to make flan and that would set her on a better path. And so she takes this flan to the break room at Samsung where she was working at the time. And over the course, a couple of batches, then over the course of a few weeks, it turns $37 into $500 and realizes that she's onto something. And so that started as a side business. Eventually, she got into cakes. Fortunately for her, she connected with this organization called Entrepreneurship for All, which works in a bunch of different markets in Massachusetts, now actually in a couple in Colorado, and is expanding in a few other markets in New York State and Rhode Island. And they helped her figure out, one, a better business and pricing strategy. She had been underpricing her cakes. But two, they connected her with a local banker. And she was able to raise some money to buy a building and now has a physical location. She employs just over a dozen women in her community in Lawrence, and it's a real success story. And it's, by the way, is a great story of someone who starts out needing some help from the community around her, including E for All, but also including a number of women that came together and experimented with her and taught her how to bake cakes on the weekends as she got her business up and running. And now she is a pillar of her community, and now she's a mentor in the E for All programs, and she's giving back to new businesses. So she is. You can't pick your favorite of the stories because there's so many incredibly compelling stories, but hers, particularly because we were just talking about capital, hers is one that really stands out to me as just an incredibly powerful example of someone with the help of a community really changing their lives and turning their lives around.
And Seth, admit it, you like the flan. So, well,
it's delicious.
That's
yeah. I've got a sweet spot for it.
Absolutely. So in the book, again, there's more stories, including Isaac Collins, son of two felons, and now successful Black businessman and community leader. So many good stories. I really, really love this. And I know you talk about some of the policies, some of the areas that community banks play a role in all of these areas. Far, far, far too much for us to talk in our short conversation today. But I highly encourage our listeners to pick up a copy of The New Builders and get in touch with you, Seth Levine, as well as your co-author, Elizabeth McBride, who is an award-winning business journalist. Seth, how can people get a hold of you?
Outstanding. Maybe we'll win an award for The New Builders, and I can make that claim as well. The easiest way to find out more information and to find resources to buy the book, including local sellers of the book, independent bookstores, is at our website, which is www.thenewbuilders.com. You can also learn a little bit more about some of the people we profile in the book, see their pictures, hear a little bit about their stories. And you can also join the movement. People have been tagging themselves on social media, I'm a New Builder, and finding themselves as part of our bigger movement. I
cannot encourage our listeners strongly enough to pick up a copy of the book. Seth Levine, thanks so much for joining us and for sharing those stories, and come back in. We'd love to talk some more about it. To success. Let's get down to business. That's a wrap for this week. We'll talk to you next Sunday at 6 p.m. right here on AM 560, The Answer.